Hello and welcome. We are towards or closer to the end of Form 2 history. Now, this time around, we are continuing with what we started on nationalism and the independence movements. Remember, we started on Ghana in West Africa, and we looked at it and we came to the end. And this time around, let's look at nationalism and independence movements in Malawi. So that's what we will be looking at now. So I just request you to be there because just as we looked at Ghana, this topic again is a very good one because now we'll be looking at our country, that is Malawi. So we're going to look at some of the factors that caused the nationalistic movements in Malawi, and who were the people or what were the movements that were formed towards the nationalism. And again, who were the people, some of the people who played a major role, and what has been the importance of those movements or nationalistic movements in Malawi. So in all, we are going to look at all these issues. So I just ask you to be there. Be there and follow attentively. Just discipline yourself to be there until you finish these things and master these things, so that when it comes to exams, you'll be able just to recall these things because you have been mastering it. Remember, what I say is repetition, 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 repetition. At one point in time, you'll be a master of these things because you repeat again, then you know them for sure. So this is to your advantage. Should you miss these things, should you miss these instructions, I tell you, you will not benefit much from this one. I know when the teacher teaches in class, we miss a lot. We miss some of the things, the concepts that we are supposed to know. But you know what? During exams, whether the teacher taught you on a particular thing or not, whether the teacher taught you very well or not, but the exams are going to be asked on all the required things that are there. So that's why I ask you to master these things. Repeat again, repeat. Whether it's a simple thing, just have that time, discipline yourself and repeat that thing again. So you see that you will be getting used to these things. So let us be together and let us move on to the nationalism and independence movements in Malawi. So Malawi, formerly known as Nyasaland. We know Malawi was formerly known as Nyasaland. Maybe you have ever heard Malawi being referred to as Nyasaland or Nyasaland, but here now, officially, you now know, you are told now to say Nyasaland. Or Malawi was formerly known as Nyasaland and was declared a British protectorate on 14th May 1891. Sir Harry Johnson became the first Her Majesty's Commissioner and Consul General for Nyasaland. So Harry Johnson was the first commissioner for Her Majesty in Britain. So the country was known as Nyasaland Protectorate from 1891 to 1907. So you have to know that one. And in 1907, Nyasaland received the first constitution known as the Crown Colonial Concession. So this was during the administration of Sir Alfred Sharp, who had replaced Sir Harry Johnson. So the name Nyasaland was also adopted under this constitution. So when Nyasaland received the Crown Colony in 1907, then still more the name maintained to say it is Nyasaland. So with that then, during that time there was Alfred Sharp who replaced Sir Harry Johnson. The head of government was the governor. So the governor was assisted by an executive council, that is cabinet, and legislative council, the parliament. And Sir Alfred Sharp became the first governor of Nyasaland using that crown constitution. So since Nyasaland had no valuable minerals and had little industrial developments, it attracted very few European immigrants to settle in Nyasaland. Therefore, there were very few Europeans to be chosen as administrators. Hence, the government was mostly controlled from Britain rather than settlers, uh, uh, as was the case with elsewhere in Central Africa, such as in Northern Rhodesia, Gold Coast, and in Western Africa, in Southern Rhodesia as well. So there were settlers there. But here in Nyasaland, very few settlers came here because there were no minerals. So with that, no more whites, not many whites came to settle in Nyasaland. Now we are starting a journey now to look at the factors that led to the rise of nationalism in Malawi. Factors that led to the rise of nationalism in Nyasaland or Malawi. Number one is religion. Religion played an important role in Malawian protest against colonial rule. For example, we talk of Eliot Kenan Kamwana, the leader of Watchtower movement. He preached against taxation. Charles Domingo, he started the separatist churches amongst the Ngoni and condemned the treatment of Africans on European estates. John Chilembwe, the leader of the Providence Industrial Mission, he staged the uprising in 1915 against the colonial rule. So we see religion, the leaders, the religious leaders, they started, or African leaders started their own churches, apart from that were independent of those missionary churches. So those ones, they were preaching against the colonial rule in their churches. Effects of the First and Second World Wars was also another factor for the rise of nationalism in Malawi. So Africans initially believed that the white man is invincible and unbeatable. However, during the First and Second World Wars, they fought along with the whites and saw them being killed. This removed the belief that the European was unbeatable and encouraged Africans that they could fight and end colonial rule at home. So during the war, when they were in the battlefront there, their belief changed to say, oh, look at a white man is beaten, is killed. So whereby at first they believed that the whites they never die. Malawian soldiers, they fought in the Second World War, and many of them were sent to North Africa and the Far East. The war broadened their mental horizons and made them long for political change in their homeland. So the Malawians, they were sent to fight elsewhere along the British lines. So there then, when they were exposed to those areas, their thinking capacity now changed to say, we can rise against these people whom we call our colonial masters. So effects of this First and Second World Wars had a bigger impact on the mentality of the Malawians. Colonial government policies on land, labor, and taxation was another factor that contributed to the rise of nationalism. Number one, what policies were there? Policy on land. Most people in Malawi lost land to the white settlers, especially in southern region, Nkatabe, and were forced to migrate to Hire and Swampy and unfertile areas. So we see to it that the Europeans, the few Europeans who came, they dominated wide areas in those places. As a result, they displaced the Africans. So Africans were not happy. Malawians were not happy with that on land policy. And on labor policies, the colonial government introduced Tangata System. The Tangata System was a form of forced labor which Africans worked as payment for rent. Under this system, landowner could demand labor from a tenant in place of rent for land. Africans were treated, and work for itself was irksome. It was bad. It was bad. Irksome, bad, and many Africans resented this system. So what we are saying on Tangata system, those whites, when they grabbed the land, they did not chase away the Africans. They put a condition to say, all right, this is my land. So you Malawians who are here, you are going to pay rent to me on settling on this land. So I don't want money. You are poor, you don't have money. So what you are going to do is that I am opening a farm here. You will be working in my farm. You'll be working in my farm about 16 hours a day, 16 hours or 12 hours a day, or 13 hours a day, 11 hours, like that, to pay rent. So many Africans, many Malawians, they did not like that one, to say no, 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 no. So we will not have time to work for our own. So it will be like we are just misused. So that one, that system was called Tangata System. Pay the rent on your land. Taxation policies. Africans were highly taxed and suffered from acute economic problems as they had no sources of revenues. So those who failed to pay tax were tortured, and sometimes they had their wives and children taken as hostages. Therefore, Africans, they hated these oppressive colonial policies, and they wished for a self-determination. So on taxation, there was also another imposition. The government did it deliberately to say, all right, Africans have to pay taxes to the government. Now, they did not have money. Hence, they were forced to go and work in the farms. There, they were paid just exactly the money to pay the tax. So that's why we are saying that they suffered acute, great economic problems because they had no resources, no sources of revenues. And as that one was not enough, those who paid, who defaulted, who failed to pay, they were tortured, they were whipped, or sometimes their wives, they were taken, and even children, they were taken as hostages until the man, the father, pays the tax to the government. So that one, it means he was forced to go and work in the farm of the whites in order to pay the tax. So Africans in this way, they hated this thing and wished to be independent. Another factor was the federation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland. It also contributed to the rise of nationalism. So in Malawi, nationalism increased when the British proposed to establish a federation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland. So this caused great opposition in Nyasaland due to a number of reasons. So there was that federation, a federal government, to say a state of Malawi, a state of Zambia, a state of Zimbabwe, they need to form a federal government, one government. And that one, it happened. We are going to look at that one in Form 3. Towards the end of the Form 3 history, we'll be looking at that one, the Federation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland. So we're saying in Nyasaland, the people hated that one a lot. They hated the union of Rhodesia and Nyasaland. Why? The chiefs feared that the federation would rob them of their power. So the chiefs thought that their powers would be reduced. The migrant laborers from Nyasaland did not want the system to pass the system of pass laws and radical segregation in southern Rhodesia to be introduced in Nyasaland. They also feared that this would delay the attainment of self-government. With that, then, the federation intensified the desire to achieve independence from the British. So Federation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland, also known as the Central African Federation, was a political union of Southern Rhodesia, Northern Rhodesia, and Nyasaland. So here you have to know and remember the federation. So in Nyasaland, for these three reasons, the people, they did not like it. They feared that it would delay the attainment of self-government. So with that, they did not want that one. And they also did not want the segregative policies that were happening in Southern Rhodesia, to say if those things they come here, then we are going to lose our country as well. So even the chiefs were saying that they feared that they would lose their powers. Chirembwe uprising was another factor for the nationalism in Malawi. In 1915, Reverend John Chirembwe ran into conflict with the white settlers. So this was because Chirembwe was unhappy with how some estates owners treated African workers, especially on Bruce estates. So there were disagreements between Chirembwe and William Jervis Livingstone, the manager at Bruce Estate at Magomero. So the rising of Chirembwe marked the beginning of African nationalism in Malawi. So Africans began to believe that it was possible to liberate their country from the colonial rule. So we see to it the uprising of John Chirembwe. Again, this one, we're going to look at it in detail when it comes to Form 3. We're going also to look at it very well there, the Chirembwe uprising. So you know Chirembwe is on the money. Chirembwe, the one who is on the money. We are talking about that one on 2000, not, yeah, that gentleman, Reverend John Chirembwe. So he rose in 1915 against the colonial government. So that one, it marked the beginning of now the opening up of Malawi to say, oh, the people now, they were eager enough to say, if Chirembwe started it, we're going to continue until we attain our independence. That's why you can see to it that John Chirembwe is there on the money, because he started that journey of nationalism to say, no, we need to be independent, way back in 1915. Western education was another factor for the rise of nationalism in Malawi. The missionary schools produced a class of educated Africans who began to question some colonial policies, just as it was in Ghana. Remember, we talked about this again in Ghana. So these people encouraged others to resist the colonial rule. For example, Eliot Kamwana, a product of Livingstonia mission schools, he preached against the taxation. So we see to it that there were so many who got education from the missionary schools. After they got that education, they were able to analyze critically the issues. Hence, there were against some of the policies of the colonial government. Labor migrations was another factor for the rise of nationalism in Nyasaland. So many Malawians traveled outside the country, outside the colony, to work in the copper belt of Northern Rhodesia or mines of South Africa. So these people encountered new ideas and people of different backgrounds. So these experiences made them interested in political change at home. So we see to it that those who migrated to go to work in the mines in Northern Rhodesia, Southern Rhodesia, as well as others, they even went to South Africa. There then they interacted with people of different backgrounds. As a result, they were opened up to the world affairs. This one, it also led them to say when they came back, they started to fight on for their independence, to say, no, we can be independent. So here then, let us look at the nationalist movements in Nyasaland. So they were the voluntary associations, associations of people who voluntarily came together and formed that association between 1912 and 1940. The Nyasaland African Congress, like a party, 1943 to 1959. The Malawi Congress Party, the 1959 1966. So these were some of the nationalist movements that were there to fight against the colonial government. Now let us look at the native associations or warfare associations. We hear today there are so many warfare associations in different parts. You find that when maybe we take the Yao, they are maybe in Kalonga, you find that the Yao Association in Kalonga. Or maybe the Tonga, they are in Sanje, you hear that the Friends of Nkatape or the Tonga Association in Sanje, like that. So that's what we are talking about. When we hear about the native associations, they were the warfare associations, just as we have or we hear about them today. So these were the associations organized in the district or region by Africans with an aim to improve conditions for Africans during colonial rule. So number one, the first Native association was formed at Kalonga in 1912 by Simon Chiukepo Muhango. One of its prominent founders was Kyungu Peter Mwakasungula. So it was North Nyasa Native Association. So the first Native association to be formed was in Kalonga, formed by Simon Chiukepo Muhango. So that one, it was called the North Nyasa Native Association. So the other Native association was the West Nyasa Native Association, formed among the Tonga in Karabe in 1914. Another one was the Mombera. The Mombera Native Association was formed among the Ngoni in Mzimba in 1920 by Chief Amon Mtwalo II. The other one was Blantyre Native Association, formed in 1923 in Blantyre. You see those native associations, they were formed, remember the aim? They were formed with an aim to improve the conditions for Africans during the colonial rule. Another one was Mulanje Native Association, 1924. The other one, Tiolo Native Association, 1924. Another one, Shirazulu Native Association, 1926. It was formed by Dr. Daniel Malikebu. Dr. Daniel Malikebu. And another one was formed in Zomba, the Zomba Native Association, in 1927. Another one, Lilongwe Native Association, 1929. The other one, Kasungu Native Association, 1930. And the other one was also Lower Shire Native Association, 1931. So by 1931, you can see to it that there were native associations from Kalonga in the north up to the south in Nsanje, the Lower Shire. There were native associations all over to fight, to talk about the improvement of the conditions by the government during the colonial rule. So formation of the native associations, it was not bad because people were voicing out to say, no, we need improvement in our conditions of living. Reasons why Levi Lumumba is honored as the father of native associations. So among all the native associations, then rose a star or a figure by the name Levi Lumumba. So he is honored as the father of native associations. The question is why? Number one, Levi Lumumba led to the establishment of all other native associations in the central and southern regions of Malawi. For example, the Southern Province Native Association that was split into Blantyre, Mulanje, Tiolo, Zomba Native Association. So you see to it, he encouraged others to say, no, you should not just be having the Southern region or the Southern region association. No, you have to split that one. It has to have its own in districts. So he managed to do that. He also influenced the formation of an umbrella body to unite all native associations. So it was called the Representative Committee of the Northern Province Native Association. So he formed an umbrella body of all native associations by the name Northern Province Native Associations. Ends of the Native Association. What were the ends of that native associations? Number one, to to keep the government informed on the views and grievances of the Africans in Malawi. Also, to keep the Africans informed of the laws introduced by the colonial government. To organize public meetings for discussing matters of interest to the Africans. They also wanted the British government to govern fairly, to improve schools and roads. So in short, they wanted their grievances to be heard, so they were like the go-betweeners, because they were also taking the things from the government and inform the people to say, now the government has introduced this law. What were the weaknesses of the native associations? The associations confined themselves to specific districts and regions. Hence, they concentrated on local problems and not national ones. So, for example, the associations were too divided to speak with one voice to the government, because they centered in districts. They did not have one voice. And membership to the associations was confined to the educated class. Hence, they lacked the support of the masses. Look at, remember the UGCC in Ghana? It had the similar problem. So even the native associations, it was like a union of educated people. Hence, it lacked support of the majority who were uneducated. The methods used by the native associations were moderate. They avoided violence and hence could not get the government's attention. So they avoided violence. They were just like, we just need to transfer your grievances to the government and from the government to the people, like that. So they avoided the demonstrations. As a result, the government's attention was not taken there. Now, let us look at the significance of the native associations in the political development in Malawi. Number one, the native associations provided valuable experience for future leaders. It was the training ground for future leaders. And also solidarity among Africans in the native associations acted as the basis for the development of mass political parties. For example, the establishment of Nyasaland African Congress and the Malawi the Malawi Congress Party. They all emanated, they came out of those native associations. The native associations turned the masses to be patriotic and got united to foster nationalism in Nyasaland. So we see to it again, they led the people to be united and fought for their independence in Malawi.